Go for it. How you doing, man?
That's doing good. Thanks so much for squeezing us in. I know you have lots of things going on. I just more than impressed. So I just figured, gosh, if we can share the love, somebody else might just benefit from that knowledge.
Hey, man, that's what it's all about.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know,
Thank you so much. Chris is good people. So
part of it takes a village is you got to share something with the village.
right. Exactly. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this
All right.
is being recorded. All right, I got that.
Right. When you're ready, I'm going to cross this over to the live stream, and then we will rock and roll. So let's see. Tell me about this and how to do it. And I think it's over here under more. And then I'm going to do, yeah. So let me know when you're ready for me to cross it over, because it's so fast.
I'm ready, man. Come on, I came ready, bro.
I was born ready. So like I had tried to write in the email, and I mean that there's no secret punches here, nothing below the belt. I've watched all your interviews, I kid you not, twice. I'm somebody who does my homework. This week I was in 3 different cities, but I watched your one specifically. There's a white gentleman, Brandon, somebody, and then you also did a older guy who's a motivational speaker. And so I watched that one. So yeah. Okay.
So did you get a chance to watch Takeoff?
Yes.
You good.
Yeah, try. Because I mean, the thing is, I feel like it really helps you understand the person. And that's all we're trying to do with the show, sort of being, music and medicine. We just try to, the questions aren't super deep, but just really sort of analyzing, which I know you've done, and just so many you're saying. So, and I'm not, trying to make it seem like I'll do question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I'll certainly stand there. Just basically.
How are you doing, man? I'm ready for you.
Sounds good. Exactly.
The answers don't really change.
Sure.
They might intensify, but they don't change.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna start crossing over live here, and I'll do that part, and then go live.
Is it Moshe?
Yeah. Very good.
Nice.
Right on top of it.
Yeah. That's my New Orleans coming out.
No, I love it. I've been there a gazillion times. I have friends and family there and in Mississippi, Marietta.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis. I am ecstatic, and honestly, I've been jubilant all week. When I found out that Ernie Singleton would be in the house, thank you, welcome. I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much.
I return that gratitude, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you. Yeah. We know that your reputation supersedes itself. Over 150 gold or platinum albums. You have worked with my sheroes and my heroes, the people that I was listening to in the womb. And so I've grown up with all these artists, and to come this close, we've interviewed a few of them, and hopefully we'll get to interview a few more. But it's always fascinating, not only to be in the presence of sheer talent and music royalty as you are, but to really think at a deeper level, because it's something I've always wondered. Fashioning the careers and helping place and publicize and get the name out for groups like Bone Thugs and Harmony, Aretha Franklin, the Bee Gees, nonetheless, Madonna. Oh my gosh. I mean, and the list continues on. You've got Prince. I mean, it just doesn't stop. And the Barcades. And so I want to, with our viewers, if you're comfortable, kind of roll the clock back and sort of take us sort of step by step through this process. And I really feel like it starts with family. Your history is so amazing because you had 10 brothers, 2 sisters. What was it like growing up in the Singleton household at that time when you were a young kid?
Oh, it was rough, man. It was so many of us. We had to eat in turns. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
We had a fun upbringing, man. It was with myself. It was a total of 13 of us. Never 13 of us in the house at the same time. Thank God for that. Right. When I was a teenager, I used to work with a guy in New Orleans who was a lot of people refer to him as the candy man. He sold candy to little small grocery stores, sweet shops, bars, the chips, the pickles, olives. He did all that stuff, right? I was the guy who carried it to the store. He was a comedian, right? Wow. He would tell people that my mom had so many children that we had to eat in turns.
I never heard that before because my family's from the
Funny.
South. So I know that term very well.
But I'm blessed, man. I did have came from a large family. Um, my mom and dad both worked, in the deep South, New Orleans. And my mom and dad both worked a lot. And I thought it was funny. I remember, who was I talking to? One of my aunts told me that my dad used to go to work with banana sandwiches.
Wow.
Exactly.
And peanut butter? Did it have banana and peanut butter? Because I've heard of that one too.
Banana sandwich. I
Banana.
put no peanut butter on that. But it was interesting because for me, as a young adult, I began to think about the challenges as a Black man, by the way, compounded with what I'm about to say, the challenges of having so many kids.
Right.
We had to work because none of us, we didn't really do it. We did learn to hustle.
Sure.
Legitimately. We never dealt drugs or anything like that. We never did illegal stuff. But we learned how to make money by the time we got to be 15, 16. Like I worked when I was 14 years old, but I worked in the grocery store. Right. Stocking the shelves, sodas in the machine, and that was it. I mean, we didn't bag groceries and nothing like that. Because these were like markets, like neighborhood groceries.
Okay.
But I just thought about my dad and like, man, what was that like? And but we were a loving family, man. We to this day, if my parents laid down rules, I missed them. But I was number 9 out of the 13 of us, so I might have missed a lot.
Sure.
Because I was one of the later kids, right?
Right.
But we were we had fun, man. We enjoyed life. We were poor, but we didn't necessarily know we were poor.
Right.
We were insulated from racism, meaning we were not allowed, didn't have the desire to go anywhere. We traveled within maybe a 2-mile radius of where we live. Right. To visit and hang out with people, family mostly. Sure. So we had that kind of upbringing. That was fun, man. I don't know, it just was fun.
Yeah. No, just amazing. I always like talking about sort of those early years because I think they're so formative in really sort of understanding sort of what makes the person have the drive, the encouragement, the enthusiasm they have. So moving on, you lived with your father for a period of time, kind of under the hopes that he might pay you back some money that he owed you, which I hear, at least word on the streets, he might still owe you. But what was that like? Because you were very young at that time, and that at that time also was a rarer decision and something that wasn't as common, seeing sort of kids, being just with their dad.
Yeah, I was 10 years old when that happened. My mom and dad, they separated. Right. And that was actually, that's when my mom and dad split up, and it was permanent. I didn't know that then. And my dad owed me some money I collected money because I was selling Christmas cards. Right. And, I just was a bummer because I didn't have the heart to tell my dad because my dad was bragging on me of being the one who loved him and the only one of his kids who stayed behind. I'm like, really? That ain't why I stayed behind. I stayed behind because I love you. You owe me some money. But I didn't have the heart to ask him because my dad was, he was an alpha male and very much a disciplinarian. And at 10 years old, all I knew was, I guess I was waiting for him to volunteer to give me my money. No, I never got that money.
Right. So still waiting on that. Yeah. And then things sort of evolve where you start to get into music and also start DJing. Who were some of your early inspirations? What was some of the music you loved listening to, even maybe before you were a DJ?
Let me close the book on the money that my dad owed me.
Okay, sure.
One of the things that I learned from that, and I say this to everybody, doesn't matter the age group or what you do, don't be afraid to ask for your money.
Sure.
Because if you don't ask, it may never come.
Right. No,
don't be afraid to ask for your money. And if you're in business and you do something, it's always about the money. Nobody does anything for free. When we go to a restaurant, you go to McDonald's and you order something, they don't ask you how much money you got. Right. They take your order, they prepare it, they fix it. But the way it's set up now at McDonald's, they collect your money.
Exactly.
But you go to any restaurant,
right,
2-star, 3-star, 5-star, they'll serve you whatever.
Sure.
It's an insult if they tell you, well, that's kind of expensive. You don't want to hear that.
No, of course.
So, but at the end of the meal, you expect to get a bill.
Right.
So it's okay to ask for your money, guys. Sure. Everybody.
Right.
Now, you and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail your question.
Sure. No,
but give that to me again.
Sure, no problem. So I wanted to know, even before you were officially DJing, just who some of your inspirations were musically, some of the music you might have been listening to at 12, 14, 15, before you were starting to already become a professional DJ.
Well, at 12 and 14, unlike today's 12 and 14-year-olds, I didn't have my own playlist, and I didn't listen to my own music.
Right.
I listened to whatever the adults in the house was playing.
I know that.
You got to understand, my generation, what came up, there was a radio.
Right.
It was only AM, by the way. FM did not exist yet.
Oh, wow.
There was a radio, yeah, AM only, not AM and FM. And there were three channels on TV, if you had a TV.
Right.
Okay, and we did have a TV. And yes, it was black and white.
Good. Yes.
So we didn't pick and choose.
Of course, right.
The TV went off at 11:30. Right. The radio was on to you. So I'm saying all that to say, I spent a lot of time. One of my aunts would always visit us, or we'd visit her. She was a big Jimmy Smith fan.
Okay.
The Jimmy Smith record that anybody want to check out is called The Sermon. It's worth asking Alexa or Googling it and letting it play, and just let it play. Watch what happens. If you're present while it's playing.
Right.
But Jimmy Smith became, and I'm not a jazz guy. I really wanted to like shake, rattle, and roll. I wanted to like party. But jazz was a big foundation of our music, and it still is to this day. So my influences were not my influences at that age. I began to have music that influenced me when I was later in my teen years. Then I was in love with the Marvin Gayes, the Four Tops, Diana and the Supremes. As I became an old teenager,
older,
I'm talking like 14, 15, 16, it became the Jacksons, or the Jackson 5. Right. But I also was a big fan of Confunction, Bar-Kays, and we couldn't then get away from what many people would call the blues today. We couldn't get away from the Joe Texas, the Joe Simons. People like Al Green, they came along in the 70s.
Right.
Okay, Marvin Gaye was one of the popular in vogue artists when I was a young mid and early teen. And of course, we can't leave out people like Wilson Pickett and Otis Redding.
Yes.
And Sam Cooke.
Right.
So those guys, they dominated our entertainment space for music we like, meaning young people. As I became an older young person in my 20s, then I began to fall in love with the Kool and the Gangs and the Bar-Kays and the Gap Band. So Gap Band came later. Gap Band when I started working in the music industry. I was actually involved in the Gap 1, 2, 3, and 4 album.
Right.
So it's I'm old as dirt and 2 days older than water. So when you ask me those questions, I have to put it in perspective, because you're talking to someone who can give you a much bigger window of music. But music is such an intricate part of all of our souls.
Absolutely. When
I was a kid, and if you got kids today that are 4, 5, 6, and 7, it hasn't changed.
No, right.
Music. I don't know who made this quote. I should look it up. I'm going to make note of it. Music soothes the soul of the savage beast. Yes. That is so true.
Yes.
That is so true. As I became a young adult, I found myself liking classical music when I wanted to do my own thinking.
Right.
Because I don't want to be programmed by Aretha's Respect or Do Right Woman or Whitney's I'll Always Love You or New Edition's Cool It. I want to get inside of me, then I need classical music. And it's okay if it's in my background. I rarely have it blasting like, like I do my hip hop when I'm playing Bitch Better Have My Money. That's loud. But I'm in party mode when that's happening.
Sure.
But when I want to think and process and be strategic, then I need music. Either give me some mellow jazz, not OCB-sa. Most people don't know who OCB-sa is. I don't even know if you know who they are, but they're an African group.
Okay.
Filled with rhythm and intensified hooks and melodies, but it's African. OCB-sa. They're amazing. A lot of instrumentals, but also a lot of chanting in their music, but very, very musical. Mellow music, probably let me go to a soulful mellow side. Grover Washington Jr., Mr. Magic.
Yes.
Soulful mellow, right? It's gonna force you to dance or move something. Okay. You don't have to know how, you don't have to have a whole lot of rhythm. You're gonna move a little something because the music will force you to do that. Sure. So music is a necessary element. I very dear, I'll say this now, and I got to let you ask questions, man. A very dear friend of mine, Quincy Jones, shared with me that when he was 12 years old, his father worked for the mafia guys in Chicago. Interesting. They were called the Jones Brothers. I just found out recently that the Jones Brothers was a black gang. I didn't know that. So Quincy said that when Al Capone and them took over Chicago, they ran the Jones Brothers out of town. Quincy said his father was a carpenter for the Jones Brothers, building houses. When the Jones Brothers were ran out of town, Quincy's father put him and his brother on a trailway bus to Seattle, which is where Quincy grew up.
Okay, sure. No,
Quincy said as a kid, all he knew was robbing, and because that was what he was exposed to. And so they would break into warehouses in Seattle. Quincy said he got in the warehouse, and he remembered one warehouse, he went through the entire warehouse. In one of the rooms, there was a piano. And Quincy said he touched it, and he said, man, he said, Ernie, he said, just was so amazing. He said, Quincy said, I knew I liked music. Hear me out. He said, but I didn't know people made music.
Interesting.
Interesting for a 12-year-old black kid from Chicago in that time period. Right. Because we didn't have the damn platform we have today. He said he knew he liked music. He didn't know people made music. But he knew that that's what he wanted to do for the rest of his life. On his way out of that warehouse, he said he stopped at that piano again. He said, Ernie, he said, man, I just knew that's what I wanted to do. He's one of the greatest right now. Oh, no. He's one of the, globally, one of the greatest in music. Ray Charles was his mentor.
Sure. No, yeah, no doubt, no question. I just think that is so amazing. And I knew you would unpack this. It's one of the reasons I wanted to be able to talk to you, because I knew that you would sense that people can use music as medicine. We call the show Music and Medicine, but there's tremendous amount of impact that happens on the brain, the way the different oral tones strike one, the way that people can manipulate it to be up or to be down or to offset their thinking. And that's interesting that you are very cognizant of how at least certain types of music, be it jazz or be it classical, allows you to have that ability to be able to focus and do some of the key things you want to do. So that's an amazing transition into becoming a DJ. How did that come about, and what were the things, because I know you knew how to ultimately dominate the airwaves, but that was still a big transition from liking music, listening to it, and then programming for people. Like I said, we didn't really have our own playlists and our own, iDevices. Take us through that process of sort of starting literally in the control booth and then taking it over.
Well, that's an interesting one there. The local radio station in the town that I lived in New Orleans, did a teenage DJ contest. I was going to the radio station already, only on Saturdays. There was a guy named Peter Champ Clark in New Orleans who was a sports announcer.
Right. Wow.
He was also a vice president at one of the big banks. It was kind of the equivalent of Bank of America or Chase. It was called National Bank of Commerce in New Orleans. But Champ Clark, we referred to this guy, Peter Champ Clark, did a sports show, and he had kids on all the time. And I was one of the kids one Saturday. I was in a program in New Orleans. I went to a high school called George Washington Carver, and there was a program called Distributive Education. So I was in that program, but we went to school a half a day, we worked the other half of the day. But at this point in time, I was encouraged by friends, my classmates, to get in the contest, the teenage DJ contest. So I got in the contest. To my surprise, I won the contest. I mean, like 2-1, I had more votes than everybody else. And while in the contest, at that point in time, hip hop did not exist.
Of course.
So I practiced finding clever stuff to say and rhyme and rap over instrumental music.
Sure. Wow.
And I called it talking trash. But long story short, I must have talked more trash than everybody else. So I won that contest, and I didn't think I would. So that got me involved in radio with a 30-minute job, 30-minute on-air slot, Saturdays only. And it went from that to me becoming the guy over time who programmed the music for the radio station and an on-air talent. Interestingly, it's nice when you got a great team you work with, because you got a good team of good people.
Right.
They motivate you to be better.
Yes.
You know, there was a guy that I worked with. I don't even know where he is today. His name was R.J. Jenkins. He called himself Majesty, Your Majesty.
Okay.
But we, again, this is before hip hop. So our drops, our station drops were like arrogant. We called ourselves the Town Takers, meaning we came with a better game. But we were on a station there were other Black broadcasters and lots of white broadcasters.
Right.
So everybody on my station, not everybody, maybe 3 or 4 of us, had some game.
Sure.
So it was always like, who's going to be the best? Who's going to outgame who?
Right.
And everybody was intimidating, by the way, to each other.
Of course.
Even though most of us would not admit it. So that's what I did while I studied in college until I graduated with a degree in accounting from Southern University in New Orleans. And when I finished my studies and graduated college, I was ready to go to work in accounting. So I was trying to get a nicely paying job, right? And I went on interviews, but none of the interviews translated into a job. So I quit my radio job and had a full-time job hunting. But I'd forgotten that I had a wife and a kid.
Right.
And I had bills.
Right.
So I started spinning records to pay the bills.
Some extra money.
Yeah. That was long before Beyonce and them did, can you pay my bills?
It's like I had to deal with the problem. Seriously. I want to grab 2 footnotes. One, the George Washington Carver, who I wound up doing a little book report on in 2nd grade, Discover the Peanut. And more importantly, before we jump fully into how you also took over the airwaves and moved on to really taking it to the next level as a promoter, I want to touch on the role of the DJ in the community at that time, because you all were not only our voice to be able to express ourselves, but also literally that voice of music. It was really sort of your decisions, the DJs that really got the playlist together and put songs on and took the moods up and down and put people to bed and put people in the mood for love and things of that nature. Just give us a little bit of that historical context of the power that DJs played, probably even some might say greater than today.
Wow, that's interesting. I was a really different kind of DJ.
I know you were.
I worked a night shift, right? So, and my audience they've never heard what I'm about to say to you. I dial my own phone number and make all the lines be busy.
I love it.
And I give out the phone number and now people to call in. and they couldn't get through. I knew they couldn't get through because I needed to be focused. But I wanted to be focused on what I needed to do to command their attention. And I was a student. Sometimes I was studying in between records.
Wow.
Because I was a college student. But every now and then I'd let somebody in, Moshe, and usually I'm like talking to you. I say, okay, Moshe, I'm gonna let you in. We're gonna talk about this. And when you come on, I want you to tell me that you're in love with this girl. I'm telling you what to do, right? Exactly. You're in love with this girl, and you know you don't know what to do, and you know, and you're concerned now because you have an erection, but you never had sex with her, and you're like you're feeling a lot of pain.
Right.
And you say that to me, right? And I said, oh man, that means you got the blue balls. And that's where my conversation would go with that guest. Right. And I kind of soothed it over, say, man, you need to chill out, or you need to tell how you feel. But I said, look, tell me what you want to hear. And you say, hey man, I want to hear Earth, Wind and Fire, and I play the record and I'm gone. Right. But that was my way of now, and I might thank you for hanging on and for getting through the busyness of my phone lines and what have you. So that was my way of programming, but I have to keep it tight. And when I do break the music to talk, it needs to be entertaining and interesting. Right.
This is way before, I don't even know of him, but Dr. Drew doing Love Lines with, I believe it was Mr. Corolla. But that they weren't DJs per se. So, I mean, very innovative. That's one of the other elements that I wanted to try to pull out, which is why I want to take those extra seconds on the DJing piece. Where do you think, and it continues on throughout your entire career, the ingenuity, we'll call it that, even though you're modest, to be able to create concepts like theater of the mind, and this idea of really making it a full performance as a DJ, well before this being something that was done commonly. Where do you think that came
from? Creativity, the desire to win.
Yes.
And always for me, on the air, I would ask myself, if I were in the audience listening, what would the jock have to do to keep me listening?
I like that.
So I was always in the control room and on the spot, but out of the control room and in wherever my audience might be. How do I keep them listening? Yeah, it's kind of like what happens when you go to a concert and somebody says, all right, everybody get up. It's like, I'm the guy who's gonna just sit there. Because I'm thinking to myself, I ain't getting up, goddamn it, I paid for it. You make me get up.
Exactly, right.
So if the performance is a command performance, what does everybody do? Everybody jumps up and they're into it, right? Command performance.
Right.
The other one is a demand performance. So I had to always give a command performance and that meant I had to find creative things to do, to say, and I feed off my music. Sure. Wherever the record would go, I'm going to preempt that. I'm going to preempt that. So if I were today playing a Justin Bieber record, I might say, oh, you know, brand new Justin Bieber. I'm on my way to California, y'all, to get my woo, and I'm gone. Right. And let the record play. And all of a sudden, people, did he say he's going to get his woo? Yeah. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's a new name for weed. Right. Exactly. You know, and I might come out and say, that's Justin Bieber, and I got some peaches in my hands, but I gotta, you know, I'm gonna go to the next. If I'm talking, right. Today jocks talk less, and most of them should talk less because they don't have a lot of substance. I'm not knocking on-air talent, but a lot, and a lot of it is also the culture of where we are today. Sure. Okay.
Which you would say is not only digital, but maybe moving so fast that we don't take the time to be as creative as we should be, or to include instruments. Tease that out for me.
No, I don't think that. I don't believe that. I think that we evolve. Everything, and everybody who's tuned in should know this and recognize this to be a fact. Everything must change, and it will. A lot of people fight change. Like people right now who are fighting the NFTs and cryptocurrency, a lot of people who are fighting just a lot of the digital stuff people are fighting, the metaverse. A lot of people are fighting, I don't know what that is, I don't understand. I mean, you're not supposed to understand it. Embrace it.
Right.
Embrace it. But everything must change. So for me, it was always looking for ways to engage my audience. And I used to use this term on the radio a lot, electrify the proper supply of their natural high. Not the weed and alcohol high.
Sure.
And I electrify that. And if you can do that, and a lot of times if you do it, you're going to connect with them, you're going to engage, and people feel you and hear you when you think they don't.
Right.
You know, we don't always have to give people a preamble to understand what we're describing, but you might have to do that if you're trying to explain the metaverse to them. But like everything, I got to take you in stages.
Right.
I can't give you what is that metaverse, man? Tell me what that is. Well, hell, I'll tell you for 30 minutes what it is. You still don't know what it is. Because some things require certain kinds of learning. You may need a visual, you may need an explanation. And a lot of us are quick to say, and we don't know what the hell you're talking about. So we're saying, we speak English somewhat, but we don't understand the explanation of what's being shared with us. And when you talk about the digital space, it's digital that gave us Google. It's digital that got rid of our encyclopedias and made Wikipedia even be not such a big factor now, because we don't want to know something, man, let me Google it.
Right, exactly.
Why didn't AOL do that? Didn't think about it.
Exactly.
Hotmail, didn't think about it. Yahoo, you know, Google. Google has become, there's Google Meets now. Right. You know, it's just interesting. Yeah, but, sure. But that's innovation. You know, sure. That's innovation. So I don't know if I answered your question or just muddied the water up.
No, not at all. That's excellent. When one thinks about some of these types of artists, so that you've already mentioned, and many of that you worked with, and when you get to MCA in a moment, what element do you feel it is when we sit there and say a name like Quincy Jones, Stevie Wonder, Prince, Aretha Franklin, that really sort of allows the magnitude, we'll just call it that, of their performance, their voice, and their music to extend generations, we know, after they're not performing?
Okay, now will you give me that in a briefer question so I can understand what you're asking me to answer?
No, that's fair. So what are maybe a couple of the elements even of these magnificent singers, many of whom you started working with, that allows their music to live on and on and on?
Wow. Well, I never worked with Aretha. I'm gonna clear that one up. But I've met Aretha, been in her presence, loved her, still love her. What elements of their music allows them to what? Still be relevant or be
timeless, magnificent, constantly used in commercials, movies?
Well, that's a lot. That's a deeper question than the surface of what I thought you were asking me. And I don't know if I could try to answer it all here in this moment. First of all, there are great records and there are classics. The classics are timeless. The classics are, let me go way back to one that most people, unless they're musically somewhat in tune, Louis Armstrong. You know, Louis Armstrong, you know, has a couple of classics. Aretha made lots of classics. Marvin Gaye, just last year, I believe, was voted by the Rolling Stone, which is considered to be the who's who. And I say considered to be because it's a white publication, and it's basically been white boys in that spot. So I have a little bit of an issue when organizations like the Rolling Stone does this, but I'm not dissing the Rolling Stones. I just been Black all my life, so I'm so used to us not being recognized that it's hard for me to give Rolling Stone credit when they should have made Marvin Gaye the #1 record of all times 30 years ago. But they just did it. I ain't mad with them. Right. But I'm not sure if it would have been, if Marvin would not have been considered the #1 record of all times 20 or 30 years ago, because Marvin Gaye was a poet and a prophet.
Right.
And a prophet.
I believe it.
Okay. I mean, in the mid 70s, he was singing what's going on and talking about inner city blues and ecology and the earth and the global warming stuff. And,
Still
you know,
applies to the, right.
yeah,
Yeah,
it still applies. He'd still be singing the same songs and would probably be charging people $300 or $400 a ticket to get in to see him sing it.
right.
Because nothing changed about what that album represented.
Right.
So I said that to say to you, there's nothing I can do about a classic other than validate it.
Sure.
You know, there was a classic that I worked, a recent classic, that was Bone Thugs and Harmony's Crossroads.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That song is an example of Bridge Over Troubled Waters. It's
Right.
an example of Wind Beneath My Wings.
Right.
It's an example of inner city blues.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to a lot of my friends at regular radio stations. I mean, not the hip hop stations. Hip hop
Right.
stations, they were playing Crossroads like as if it was the national anthem.
Right. Right.
But stations what city are you in?
I'm in San Francisco.
Well, stations like KSOL would have been San Francisco station.
Mm-hmm.
BLS if it was New York.
Right.
Or WYLD if it were New Orleans. Those kind of stations were saying stuff like, man, we can't play no record like that. We're going to look like playing a record saying Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Right.
So I told them, I said, well, don't say their name.
Right.
You don't have to say their name, but just play the record.
Right. Right.
Because these were stations who were Patti LaBelle, Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston
Right.
kind of stations.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't into playing rap. I'm like, you gotta be kidding.
Right.
You know, I said, those people who listen to those stations know more about living and dying and
Right.
letting go
Mm-hmm.
than any hip hopper that you know in your town.
Right.
I said, because your audience has experienced more death
Right.
than your hip hop community has. I said, you don't have to say their name, just play the record. Well, no. Everybody who knows anything about music and certainly hip hop knows what a record that Bone Thugs and Harmony had with the Crossroads.
Right.
But interesting, and to Bone's credit and their producer,
Mm-hmm.
I had already done First of the Month on Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Mm-hmm.
That was our first single. We then released a song called Buddha Lovers.
Right. Yes.
It was a song glorifying marijuana, but it was done to the Isley Brothers track, Choosy Lovers.
Right. Exactly right.
That was the music bed.
Yes.
But it was about marijuana. It's
Mm-hmm.
Buddha Lovers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was a station, you may remember this, a lot of people may and may not. There was a station out of Miami called The Box.
Mm-hmm.
They played on the edge or edgy hardcore rap music.
Right.
They would not play the Buddha Lovers record.
Wow.
The program of The Box told me, he said, Ernie said, we'd play it. He said, but we know if we added that record today, it would be #1 tomorrow.
Right. Right.
He said, but they were getting a lot of heat. They were getting heat from people like, I'm sorry, you asked me about classical music and I'm taking you somewhere else. But people like C. Dolores Tucker, Reverend Sharpton, who's a friend of mine, my dear friend, Dionne Warwick, even my buddy back in the day, Don Cornelius, and a lot of other community people were complaining. I'm gonna use the right word. They were bitching about the lyrics in rap music.
Right.
And I'm defending them, saying, no, I said they didn't invent those words.
Sure.
You know, and Maxine Waters, I give her a high five. Maxine was right there with me, right? She was one of the few old heads who was like an advocate for the hip hop community. But this is a discussion we were having in Washington, D.C. Was Senate hearing meetings.
Right.
Long story short, I'm fighting for freedom of speech.
Right.
Okay, I didn't have a hardcore rap record on my label. I had artists like Heavy D, Eric B. and Rakim, Father MC, all fun, happy-go-lucky music, right? So I didn't have anything like Bitch Better Have My Money.
Right. Right.
I didn't have no gangster rap.
Right.
Not even close.
Right.
So, but I believe that we would do the culture a disservice if we would not allow our hip hop artists to express themselves. So I fought in their defense. They didn't have to get it. I didn't have to get paid for that.
Sure.
That was a necessary argument and fight. Back to answer your question. When music is serene and regal, its meaning doesn't change. Songs like I Will Always Love You should have been huge before Whitney did it, because Dolly had certainly recorded it.
Dolly wrote it.
Okay, but this is the power of Black people doing Black music.
Thank you.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not a racist.
No.
I don't think I am. Because like some of my wife probably don't think they're racist either. I don't think I'm a racist.
Right.
But I'm making a point here. What Whitney did to that song,
exactly.
night and day difference.
Now,
I don't think the Beatles did a bad job. Was it Eleanor Rigby? Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Aretha.
Bridge.
Night and day.
Right.
Night and day. It's a classic now.
Yes.
But when a Whitney does I'll Always Love You, it puts the seal of approval of classics that ain't gonna never go away. It's not the same as being verified on Instagram and Twitter and all that. That's not the same thing. When it's verified in that form and fashion, the song means what it means 20, 30 years later, 50 years later, it means the same thing. So I can't take credit for those great songs. And I've had a lot of artists who've had some great songs that I was just privileged to be able to say that's my record.
Right. And I want to amplify how true to the music your very core and fabric of your being is. Talk to us about the challenges you faced putting white artists and white music on Black and urban contemporary radio, because that is something that very few people know or understand, that you literally were always true to the music. And to a certain extent, it really didn't matter who the artist was.
Well, that's a good question. You know, I experienced the Black racism when the Osmonds made a record called One Bad Apple. Smash, man. Sounded like the Jackson 5, right?
Right.
And most Black programmers thought it was a Black group. You know, it's really a fly, funky record. When they found out there was a white group, everybody was like just so blown. And they were blown away because during that time period, white stations, white programmers would not put Aretha Franklin's Bridge Over Troubled Waters or Rock Steady didn't automatically get played on white stations.
Right.
Okay, no Black artist music automatically got played on white stations. George Benson made a record called, I think it was on Broadway.
Right.
But one of the lines in that record was, I'm a star in the ghetto. I may never make Broadway. Means he may never cross over. Okay. Our music had to be the just overflowing in the Black community for white stations to consider playing it. Right. So during the time the Osmonds made One Bad Apple, that was the climate. So it's almost like being Black and saying Ahmaud Arbery was wrong, he should have been running somewhere else. Nobody would say that. And so nobody felt right about seeing the Osmond get played on Black stations. Most programmers thought we're going to reserve that slot for a Black artist.
Right.
Maybe a new Levert will come along, or a new whatever, new Tony. We'll play. We'll give that record that slot. I understood that. Fast forward, right? I'm no longer in radio now. I'm in the record side, and I get a record by an artist named, and I get a song called "Do That to Me One More Time."
Sure.
Once is never enough.
Right.
It was the Captain and Tennille.
Right.
My stations played it. I get a record called Funky Town. It was a fight. It was a disco record. It was a fight. A lot of stations wouldn't play it. Before I got Funky Town, I had Donna Summer, who happens to be married to an amazing guy, a white guy, Bruce Swedien. So I'm talking to black programmers who are saying, man, she's a sister, she married to a white boy. We ain't playing that. But the music was undeniable. So my creativity now had to be, how do I get your attention, Moshe? Right. So maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll buy the latest, greatest headphones. And, right. and at the time we were dealing with something called a Walkman. Right. So my Down the Summer record or my Funky Town record that people are saying they don't want to play, I put it in the Walkman and I would just come to your office and say, man, I said, just listen to this.
Right, I love it.
I did the Bee Gees. Right. Same thing. Nobody wanted to play it. Mm-hmm. I said, how could you deny your audience this? The music was so compelling that it was undeniable. And I'll say something else that I've learned in my adult years. I thought a lot of the Memphis Horns was brothers. I'm finding out that a lot of the guys who did the Memphis Horns were white guys. Right. Were white guys. They weren't black. So we have to be careful. Martin Luther King said something that stuck with me. A lot of people may and may not. I don't know what people get. I can't quote Martin's speeches and none of that stuff. But Martin said racism of any kind is no good. Right. So whenever I found myself wanting to discriminate, not intentionally, but wanting to exclude somebody because of their skin, race, sexual orientation, I had to pause and be reminded. So much so that it's automatic with me today. Sure. Those are not. I recognize it. I recognize when people are going left or off course as opposed to going straight ahead. But it doesn't make me right and doesn't make them wrong. And so I've learned to not make a judgment. And I was blown away when I was able to have people showed me love with the Bee Gees. Yes. Staying Alive, Saturday Night Fever, that whole album. When people showed me love with Funky Town, it took almost 3 months to get past only 3 or 4 stations. There was a station in Jackson, Mississippi, right? That was playing the record, and in about 3 weeks, it went to #1, talking Funky Town. Right. There was a disco station in Houston that played it. In 2 weeks, it went #1. Wow. There was a station in El Paso, Texas. Same thing. Right. But those 3 stations were playing it, and I must have had personally that I was responsible for another maybe 35 or 40 stations that should be playing it that wouldn't play it until about 13 weeks later, and all of a sudden, it was like a volcano erupted. Everybody was playing it, and it's one of those historical records, another classic. But the artists were not African American artists. Right. Today we see that, we have a lot of artists now. I think pop radio opened up and stopped saying people like Patti LaBelle was screaming, or Stephanie Mills, they would diss her because they thought she was, she held her nose too long. Right. When our white looking soul sister Mariah Carey hit the scene, with Butterfly, everything began to change. And I noticed it and I observed it. I not had to say about it, but it was like, it was just clear. But I give Mariah credit for opening that door in stations that would have only played Carly Simon. Right. Or they might have played Bette Midler. Right. But they would have never played Patti LaBelle. Right. Without making an issue out of it or put it in its lowest rotation. But so over time, those things have changed. Like I said, everything must change. Right. So for me, man, it was just a privilege to have so many great artists to be involved with. Right.
And to have the wisdom and insight to continue to push down those walls, whatever side they may have been on, left, right, black, white.
The only thing I haven't learned, Moshe, is to give short answers.
No, I know, I love it. I love it. I want to pivot to Ruthless Records and take us through that, because many of us were sort of standing by the sidelines and really not understanding what would happen. What does it sort of mean, not only to be court appointed, but to try to figure out how to sort of move this organization forward, and then the way that you did it?
Wow. Well, to be court appointed, I give that credit to a guy named Ron Sweeney. Ron Sweeney, I've known Ron for a long time. He's an attorney and a friend. Ron called me one Friday and asked me would I consider. I just left MCA and I was starting something on my own, but he asked me would I consider running Ruthless Records. And my thought went to Easy. Easy had done several soundtrack songs for us at MCA, and sometimes he did songs for us on albums that were I would call them dogs. They weren't great albums, movie soundtracks, but there was not a hit on the movie wasn't a hit, and whatever songs we released did not connect. But people all over America were buying the album, so I thought, let me find out why are people buying this record, because there's no hits on it except the Easy cut to me, right? To my surprise, I called record stores then, because they existed, and every record store I called said that people were buying the album because of the Easy cut. So we made money whenever Easy did stuff with us, is what I remember when Ron asked me that. So I thought, what I remember about Easy and working with him as a label guy, if Easy committed to do a song and told you he's going to have that song to you in 5 weeks, you got it in 5 weeks. If he told you you're going to be $20,000 or $30,000, whatever, that's what he charged you, no more, no less, no bickering. So I like that about him, right? And NWA was on the upswing, and the Easy was kind of stepped out as a solo act. So I respected his business acumen and what was going on with him and Dre and Yellow and Ren and all of them. So I was like, so I told him yes, I would consider it. That Monday, this happened on a Friday. That Monday, I get a call from a publicist who told me, congratulations. I didn't know what he was talking about. He said, oh, here you're running Ruthless Records. One of my Jewish attorney friend, publicity friends. And I didn't know it. So that was the beginning of me to run Ruthless. Diving into Ruthless, I'm dealing with institutions, Chemical Bank, Superior Courts of California, a very prestigious law firm called Loeb & Loeb. They were handling Eazy-E, Ruthless's estate. Eazy had about 42 acts signed, 42 acts on his roster, but only 21 of those acts, or 20 of those acts, were signed. So the 22 that weren't signed, they wanted me to get rid of them. I said, we can't do that. I said, let's see what they got. Let's go through the vote. Let's go through the music. And so I began that process behind the curtain. Meanwhile, I was preparing the Bone Thugs release. Bone Thugs had already had success with their EP. Okay, Thuggish Ruggish Bone, all that stuff was happening. So when we got the East 1999 album, we did first of the month, our first single, and it was easy. That was an easy choice. Big record, blew up. That the Crossroads album sold 2.5 million units. No, 2.2 million units off of that one song. Wow. First of the month. Then we did Buddha Lovers. Buddha Lovers got rejected. Okay, we couldn't get arrested with Buddha Lovers. We went from selling 100 and maybe 50,000 units a week to selling about maybe 12,000 units a week. While we were trying to figure out what to do with Buddha Lovers. So now I'm going to go to the Crossroads, but I couldn't release the Crossroads. I'm sorry, you wanted to know the transition of Ruthless. I'm just giving you a highlight of something very significant for the label. I couldn't release Crossroads because my friend Sylvia Rohn at Atlantic had brokered a deal with the Bone Thugs guys to the tune of about $250,000 to do a song for the Set It Off movie soundtrack. Right. So while that song was doing this thing for Atlantic, I thought, I'm not going to release anything. I'm not going to muddy the waters.
Right.
I told Bone Thugs I'm willing to spend $1 million on this Crossroads song if you clean it up. Meaning at that time, this was probably like 97, 96 maybe. There was still a lot of heat about lyrics, and you know, they call that woman a bitch and all that sort of stuff, right? So I told them, give me something that will meet broadcast standards, and they did. They remixed the record, and when they brought it back, it was a Crossroads that everybody heard. I stripped out of the original East 1999 album. Anybody who got the first East 1999 album, they got the original version of Crossroads, not the remix version. When Bone Thugs delivered me the remix version, we took the one with a lot of motherfuckers and niggers in it. Right. We took that track out of the album and replaced it with the remix version, and didn't make and put a sticker on the album. Didn't change anything else.
Right.
And then we restocked the stores with the new album, and we ended up selling 5.5 million units. And what was the thing that knocked it really over the top?
MTV.
When they did the MTV Awards, I literally had to make 4 trips to New York to secure that one slot, and I knew there would only be one rap song played on the MTV Awards. I also knew that my guys probably wasn't going to win the award, because Bone Thugs are pretty authentic. They don't front. They are who they are. Okay, but so I'm fighting LL, who has what I call Q value, because there's just TV exposure. We were up against LL with Snoop, might have been Tupac as well. But I knew we were up against some artists who also had white heads of the record company able to campaign for them at MTV.
Sure, right, exactly.
I give Tom Freston and the MTV crew props, but I told them that we would guarantee them great TV. Right. In other words, I told them that I would reincarnate that video on their stage, and that's what we did. Right. And that was the thing that tilted the ball for MTV to give us the yes answer, and we were that act. And again, they ended up selling over 5 million units. To date, it's their biggest selling record ever. To me, that was an honor, because it was about Eazy's legacy. Right. For me, it was about Eazy's legacy. He has an incredible girl he married, Tamika Wright, who was kept out of the mix because of the court battle. I can only imagine what she was going through. But I thank Ron Sweeney, and I think Tamika, quite honestly, because you know her blessings made it easier for me, because I did have a couple of people in the mix who worked at Ruthless prior, and they were a godsend for me. Cassandra Ware and Don Cunningham, who did our video. So Ruthless was a blessing for me. There was also an opportunity in my mind, Moshe, was my opportunity to give back to someone who, here we are today, we still celebrate Eazy's contribution in hip hop.
Sure. Well, this is obviously Black History Month, so I wanted to not miss that, critical song, his work. You go to Warner and you take them from number 7 to number 1. Talk to us about, I know that they allowed a lot of the artists to have amazing creativity, but you were a big driving force behind those artists really not only being able to be creative, but many of them are household names to this day.
Well, Moshe, nobody does this alone, man.
No.
Warner's was a great example of that. Warner's, I had an incredible team. It was an adjustment for me because Warner is very compartmentalized. I'm used to having all my publicity people report to me. Right. It didn't work that way at Warner's. There's a white guy that's the head of publicity, and everybody, black or white or country, they work for him. Right. I had left MCA where we absolutely had our own publicity people who answered to us. So I had great people at Warner Brothers, and I got to be honest with you, man. I give a lot of credit to somebody who's not talked about very often, Mo Austin.
Okay.
Mo Austin is one of the most amazing people that I had a privilege of working for. And Mo allowed us to do whatever we wanted to do. But for me, being able to do what you want to do, that card was first given to me when I was at MCA, working under Irvin Azoff, because Irvin allowed us to run the Black music division, and whatever we wanted to do, it made sense to us. I'm gonna say if it made sense, they let us do it. Not really. We didn't do anything that didn't make sense.
Right.
Interestingly, though, it worked. Warner's was a different kind of company because Warner had an incredibly huge roster. Right. And one of the experiences I got at Warner's that was unique for me compared to other labels that I had been involved with. Warner's was very, very firm about allowing the artist's creativity, right, to be the defining factor of what happened with their music. And it was a great place to work, man. A lot of people call us a country club. There was nothing country clubbish about working at Warner Brothers. There was work, right? But you know, having the privilege to work with people like Roger Troutman and Al Jarreau and Benson and Prince, just incredible, and an incredible group of people. I mean, there's a girl named Pat Shields. To this day, she keeps the Warner Brothers people together. She reports everything that happens. People are sick, people die. Pat is letting you know what's going on with the Warner Brothers family. No other label has, and maybe it does exist. I can't speak for other labels, but it certainly isn't happening at my old MCA camp. But Warner's was a blessing for me, man. It gave me an opportunity to be in a camp that really allow you to run your department. You know, and I'll say this and I'll end it. There was a time that Roger Troutman needed probably like about close to $300,000, right, a shortfall for his concert tour. They were going to make $300,000. They needed $300,000 above what they were going to make in order to be able to not take a hit and have people making less money than they should or not being able to be paid at all. Mo Austin called me into his office and told me the situation and told me it was my call. You know, he said it's not in the budget for them, but if you want to do it, you know, it's because it's going to come out of your budget. And it's, you know, so it's my decision. So I said yes, let's give it to them. My thought was they'd made money for the company. They were going on tour. It could help them. It was right behind the I Want to Be Your Man record. And to my surprise, Roger's brother who shot him, unfortunately, Larry Troutman. I remember he called me one day, and we were doing bad with the new single, really bad. It was like, I ain't got nothing good to tell him. I'm like, he must be calling to complain. I pick up the phone, it's Larry Troutman. He said, Ernie, he said, man, I just want to say thank you for everything you guys have done. He said, you know, we had a great run with I Want to Be Your Man. The second single didn't do so good. You guys gave us tour support money and you didn't have to, and went on and on and on. And he was thanking me. I thought, wow, that's the one and only time in my life that a manager called me to thank me, wow, as opposed to complain about something that was wrong.
Right. And that's what I wanted to transition to, because often the industry can get a really bad rap. How do you feel that some of the things you did were different and you really tried to be that hero? Because like you said, I know in many cases you helped introduce people and make artists that may not have gotten to where they were, you know, were it not for your team's talent, to give them credit.
So give me the question again.
Yeah, sure. So just in terms of what do you think are some of the positive ways that you were able to help artists? Because so often you hear of big machines sort of not being able to allow the artist to creativity or taking advantage of the artist.
Well, people who say that, they say it because they've never been a big machine. They have no idea what comes with the territory of juggling a big roster. Compound that with a big roster of successful artists. Compound that with a big roster and you drop, I don't know, a Mary J. Blige, you remind me that you worked for 3 months, maybe 4 months with no budget. You just worked it as an album cut. And then all of a sudden, it became a live record that everybody that played urban music wanted to play it. And it was climbing their playlist, not to the top 20, but to the top.
Right.
Brand new artists. But you still got Mary J. I mean, that's Mary J. But you still got Patty. You know, you got music you're dropping on Stephanie Mills. You got your Loose Ends record. You know, you're getting ready to put a new Heavy D on people. You know, it's so now you got 8 or 9 records that are like doing something. And so people who don't understand that you got to manage not only those number of releases, artists coming in for press. Are they doing it in New York? Are they doing it in Philadelphia or Miami? Artists, they're going to the Essence event. You're getting them on the American Music Awards. You got to handle that. They're on the Grammys. You got all these things to do. You're doing a video for this artist here. Diddy wants more money for the Mary J record because it rained when they were doing the video and they lost the day and it's going to cost you another $200,000. Those kind of things are happening. While your homie Joe friends are bringing you a new act that they want you to check out. So there's a lot that goes on. When people say that, you know, the labels don't do this and don't do, they have no idea. They really don't know. Now, does it mean that they can do it themselves? They sure they can do it themselves.
Right.
But the major labels have a, you know, and I love Hammer, man. I saw Hammer and his brother, Louis Burrell, who's a friend of mine. And maybe not, but I think he's a friend of mine. But I saw them when they were at Capitol. But I also saw them as Busted Records doing their own thing. Right. It weren't my act. It wasn't my label. It wasn't my roster. They were my friends, but I don't tell them what to do. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wow, why won't they let Capitol call the shots? They got years of experience. Right. And, you know, and they're really the bank. Right. Why are they taking the lead instead of, I don't know what I'm talking about because I wasn't at Busted. I just liked Hammer, man. I thought he was an incredible artist, and I still think that. We all knew what Hammer was for dancing in the whole 9 yards, right? Yeah. So for me, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, wow, that's messed up. Right. Meanwhile, I'm dropping a new edition. I got another Ready for the World record coming up. I got my own issues, my own roster. Right. But I look at that and I ask myself, I ask in my head, why don't they let the label do it? Or why don't they work closer with the label instead of, you know, that's one of the things that I give Andre Harrell credit for when we did Uptown Records. Andre and his team had a lot of input on what we did. But we talked all the time. Right. You know, sometimes we had tugs of war, but we all wanted the same thing. We all really wanted to win. And not saying that the guys at Busted didn't, but though the creativity of your team comes into play, and it's not all Ernie. Right. I get the credit. You know, Ernie, I get all the credit. Right. But it wasn't me. You know, I got a girl in Atlanta named Martha Thomas. She was doing X, Y, and Z. A girl named Sarah Melendez in Chicago. She was making these things happen. Right. And the list goes on. So that's part of it. But we also have a marketing team. I remember when we advertised, we did bus advertising on the outsides of the bus and sometimes inside the buses. And we did it in about 10 cities around America, like New York, Chicago, Atlanta. But our marketing people came up with the campaign and they put the details together. Right. So when we have success, that success is more of a team effort. And sometimes we don't agree with each other when we're strategizing the plans. Right. And not that we are disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing. Sometimes we just need clarification, because it doesn't matter if we're Black, white, Asian, we all want to win.
Right, right.
And that's kind of what sometimes when we don't agree, it's like it's like if you're not telling me I'm going to do some advertising in the metaverse, I'm figuring I'm going to have to explain that to a lot of people.
Exactly.
So we explain it.
Sure.
And maybe they'll knock me down from this kind of a metaverse campaign to make it just that, but it's okay because when they see the results from it, they'll become believers. Because the next time now, my head of marketing might be the guy with the idea. I mentioned the bus advertising because we did that, and it was Al B. Shore, a Heavy D. I don't know. I know we did it on. I'm saying Al B. It wasn't Al B because Al B was my Warner Brothers act. We had several artists on this campaign because it was expensive.
Right, sure.
It's kind of how we advertise when we advertise in Essence or those kind of Black publications. We put 3 or 4 artists in it, and it made the $18,000 or $25,000 a page ad.
Right.
Makes sense because now we split it with 4 different artists. So we did creative stuff like that.
Right.
As positioning our artists. You know, if I had New Edition doing American Music Awards, I fought the team at that time. It was Dick Clark's team. We fought them if we had to, but it wasn't like a fight. We just went in there. We were ready to go into our checkbook and write a check. We want every performing slot on the show we could get. We wanted it.
Right.
Because other than having New Edition on the show, can we get Father MC on the show? Can we get? So we're looking for ways to get multiple acts on these shows if it fit the schedule and if the production company would allow for it. The hardest one to do that with, that requires the most most sophisticated negotiation skills, is the Grammys.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah, the Grammys is the show of shows.
Right, right, because the money is bankable based on the performance.
It's bankable for more reasons than that. It's almost like getting the Kennedy Center honors. It's unlike any other honors.
Right.
So when you're Grammy nominated, it means something. If you win, it means something different, and it means money if you win. Right. And so when I see artists like The Weeknd going through what he's going through, I ponder, who's his manager? Who's his team? Somebody needs to be talking to him and showing him where he can benefit. But sometimes people sometimes we do things based on principle. It's not about money. It's not about anything else. It's principle. I have an older brother who I used to always have to explain to him that brown nosing isn't brown nosing. Sometimes you got to do certain things in order to get to where you're trying to go, or you won't ever get there.
Right, absolutely. On that note, and I appreciate all the rich information, what advice would you give to the young, sort of music executive today? As we had sort of hinted at, it's much more digital. It's the wave of the future. The continued changes that come up. What advice would you impart almost to a younger Ernie that's out there today trying to make it happen for artists?
Yeah, my advice would be, don't give up. Be smart enough to navigate. Like I did something crazy by quitting a job without a job, and but it forced me to dig deep, and I began spinning records, and that became a way of me making money to pay my bills. But a lot of artists, not even artists, just people in general, whether it's an artist or an executive or a producer or a songwriter, don't give up. Collaborate. And most importantly, embrace change. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Embrace change. I've seen so many evolutions. I've seen the evolution of cable. Right. But I didn't participate. I didn't get involved. My friend Bob Johnson wrote a book pretty much with BET that has yet to be rewritten. Another Kathy Hughes, same thing. She's writing a book that is yet to be rewritten. But on even smaller scales than that, be confident in what your vision is. Go for it. but embrace change. And I say that with a clear understanding of where we are today with the metaverse, with NFTs, cryptocurrency, with a changing dynamic, and with, I don't know the numbers, so I'm not going to quote one, but literally every week, hundreds of new millionaires are being created from the cryptocurrency platform. I'm not one of them,
Right.
but now I say that because I want to be very upfront and transparent. But I encourage people to get involved, do the homework,
Right.
read, study, talk to people, find out what it is. And it's okay to sometimes just dip your toes in, but if you're consistent with it, a lot of people say record companies don't do this and don't do that. The record companies have, Moshe, patient money.
Right.
The average person doing this music on their own, they don't really have patient money. What I mean by that is, if you're a record company or funded entity,
right,
and you spend $2 or $3 million this month, it's not going to break their bank.
right,
If they don't make no money off of that $3 million spent, they don't do that intentionally or on purpose, but they can do that.
right.
That's a big difference in the major companies versus an independent who's just doing it on their own. Man, I'm gonna just do my own thing. Good, way to go. If you can do that, hats off to Birdman and his camp, man. That's what they did.
Right.
They did it for years. And when they finally got the deal with Universal, it was, it was pay dirt. They went from cash money millionaires to the billionaires because that's exactly what happened. Because all that music that they were selling within, let's say, a 300, 400, 500-mile radius of New Orleans, now that music is being blasted all over the United States and out of the United States. And they had a bank account backing them.
Right, right.
Different ball game. So just be persistent. And most importantly, I'm going to say to everybody, because we have a lot of this in our industry, have some integrity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So important. Well, you're our greatest of all time, and we thank you so much. I know you love being a mentor and reaching out and helping people. Tell us about your company and where we can find you.
Well, there's a lot going on in my company, man. First, you can find me on Ernie Singleton, easiest place to find me. Ernie Singleton on Facebook, on Instagram. I got to admit, I have about 4 Facebook accounts. So go to Ernie Singleton or Ernest Singleton.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 that I use consistently. E Singleton on IG or Instagram. And about my business, let me just share with you that we're in the process of doing something next level regarding the metaverse. But I can't divulge much on that until we've completed some hurdles that we're crossing right now. But it's going to be off the chart. It's going to open up the door also for artists to make money. I'm going to say from the cradle to the grave, for the artists and their families to make money. There are lots of other little things I'm doing, but let's connect that way. And I'm also committing myself to become a little bit more active on my social platforms. So, search for me, you'll find me.
Sure.
All I can say.
Well, we didn't have to look far, only because we have to do a big shout out to Chris Bridges for helping pull this together. I'm so grateful for the friendship, for the association, and for your time.
Chris Bridges is an amazingly incredible publicist. Sure. And people who need publicity, I highly recommend him. I have a question for you.
Sure, absolutely. I like questions.
Medicine music.
Yes.
Where did that come from? And what's the thought behind that, if I may? And I won't ask you no more questions, I promise.
No, please. So it represents the 2 parts of my life. I spent a lot of time in the music industry and more classically trained, realizing that I couldn't make a career of it because I can't pretend to have the talent 1/10 of any of the people we've discussed today, and even people we haven't. I became a physician. So the show kind of marries those 2 loves, but more importantly, and I think you hinted at it, and I tried to have our questions get at, many of these elements. I feel that there is such a universality when it comes to music, and also it does act as medicine to help our souls, as you said, soothing the savage beast. And more importantly, so many artists and producers and managers and promoters really have so much to help us learn, not only about ourselves, but how the music was created, and how we can even better ourselves in our lives by understanding some of what I call the music medicine, or the health behind the music. So yeah, I enjoy really sort of weaving those two together, and I think you did a phenomenal job hinting at so many of these types of qualities that you have. Tenacious, I would say, for you.
Thank you.
As you say, relentless, to use one of your own words. Theater of the mind, with respect to really having people sort of enjoy, or as you say, command one's attention. And I think you and your life have really represented for us just an example to live by. Integrity, I believe, is the last one, as being something that no industry can have too much of. And I think you've shown us a good way to do that. Like you said, not discriminating left or right, black or white, up or down. We're so grateful for all you've done.
Moshe, thank you very much. They say each one teach one. That probably should be one of the things that I encourage all the old heads to open up and do. And I say old heads, not giving a year or a date on that, just in general. Young people need guidance, and if there are old heads that's got some wisdom, share it with younger people, man. Help them to find their way and turn the light on. You know, it's weird to be in a dark room that you've been in for 3 or 4 days, and all of a sudden the lights come on. It's a different ball game when the lights come on. Right. So each one teach one. Give younger people an opportunity to grow, and to share their vision, because I'm a big believer that we're never too old to learn and never too young to teach.
Sure.
Thanks, Moshe.
Sure. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor, and you've certainly taught us a lot, and I only hope we can continue to, make you proud, and we're so proud of the things you've done, but also your willingness to share some of the secrets that you did today, and just some tips for success and happiness, and enjoying the music a little bit more than we may have even before. So thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Take care. Thank you. All right, so I ended our live stream, but yeah, no, thanks so
Good,
much.
Man.
That was really a pleasure, and I appreciate you going deep and going into some of those other areas and things like that, because like I said, I just don't think we can have enough of it. And I just enjoy the stories. I enjoy hearing about the experience, and I really hope and think that other people can really learn. These qualities are so integral, and yet they're so easy to overlook.
They're easy to overlook, and I made the comment about young people because